Yes, I saw it. Very tired. Are we holding up all right? Come on, I can get a little more enthusiasm than that on a Saturday night. There we go. Welcome to the panel. I'm Jacob Oliver. I'm the U.S. editor at Crypto Briefing, and I'm here to moderate a panel on user experience in Web3. With me, I have Ahmed Balaghi, the co-founder of Biconomy. How are you doing? Roger Brogan, Director of Solutions Architecture at Chainlink Labs. Kayla Krut, co-founder and creative director at Coin Network. And Nikola Vukovic, DeFi Saver front-end lead dev. How is everyone doing tonight?
Doing great.
Wonderful.
Doing good.
Same as used to.
Yeah, I'm just hanging in there.
Hanging in there. Sometimes we have mics for all panelists, but we're sharing tonight. Okay, so I had some communication with a few of you leading up to this panel to kind of craft the questions because I didn't want to catch anybody too off guard. So I'm going to start with a question sort of posed by Roger. You mentioned in our communications that user experience goes way beyond just the UI, right? And it deals with this whole process of interacting with DeFi protocols, fiat on-ramps, transaction fees, managing various wallets, gas fees. To start us off, what's the path towards smoothing this whole overall experience? What does that path look like, and where would you say we're on that path today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the eventual goal here is mass adoption, and to get to mass adoption, you're going to need to smooth this process out. I think everyone can agree that where we are in the process right now is it's not so smooth, right? I mean, there's lots of areas for improvement. Fiat on-ramps, setting up your MetaMask wallet, understanding private keys. What is your seed phrase? What do you mean I can't reset my password? Who do I call for tech support? I lost my private key. Sorry. So those types of things, custodial solutions, is all of that stuff that even leads up to then the UI itself, right? I think a lot of the protocols, built by engineers, they focus on making it work, not necessarily making it pretty. I, as an engineer, you could see some of the stuff I make. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to work, but I leave that to the people that are experts at making it pretty. So I think that it's just human nature. If you don't give something better, faster, easier, simpler, they're not going to adopt it, right? That's my opinion.
So building on that a little bit, a lot of people, we all believe, we're here because decentralization is critical, right? Everybody in this room knows that. Everybody else doesn't necessarily, DeFi is a scary word, NFTs are a scary word, and unless we make this easy enough to, people don't even know that they're using blockchain or decentralized media or DeFi or any of that. If you don't know, is the only way to get my mom to use it. And so it has to be as easy, or in my opinion, easier than all of the Web2 solutions. And then the things like transparency and your data privacy and your rights to own things you post on the internet, those are cherries on top of the sundae for all of the people who aren't in this room already.
Yeah, just to add how I see where we are now, and essentially at Biconomy what we're sort of building for, I feel like we're, right now the whole space comprises of a couple million people, maybe a couple million active users, represents, 0.something% in the world. And it's about sort of building for the 99%, right? And essentially that's, at least for what we're doing, is how we are building tools for the 99%. So yeah, I see that we're still at that stage where, we haven't even hit more than 1% of the population, right, in terms of adoption. So it's that early.
Right. I mean, everybody has valid points here. I think it's also, it's definitely education and it's time that it's gonna take. It's gonna get us there, just like the internet, maybe 30 years ago, right? But also, as I think Kayla said, we gotta make the right choice, or at least what we're pretty sure is the right choice, like decentralization and all this technology that we're building. We have to make it the easy choice as well, because nobody's going to use it if they don't we just have to, yeah.
Cool, gotcha. Yep. Hang on to the mic because the next question is yours, actually. When we were emailing each other, you mentioned that building a product like DeFi Saver means, this is a quote, making a very complex and layered technical and a very complex and layered technical and financial product as accessible as possible. That includes providing as much information as possible while not overwhelming the users. So my question is, what kinds of information or what information is necessary for the users? What do they need to know up front? And what kind of information is better kept, not inaccessible, certainly, but maybe reserved for more advanced users and sort of placed at a place where they can seek it out?
Right.
And how can you tell the difference?
Yeah, that's definitely what we've been trying to figure out for the past 3 or 4 years.
Where are you at?
I think we're doing hopefully a decent enough job. We're just at a point like a lot of the users are still very technical. We're sort of optimizing for them still at this point because we're in DeFi, which is like already very complex and layered, and then like trying to like build a product that's even more layered on top of that. It's just like you're gonna get this very technical sort of end user. And I think that's the type of user that actually wants to learn and they want to like figure out how everything works. So that's what I sort of meant by letting them know what's going on behind the scenes. So like very often we try to not abstract a lot of the things that some other dApps might abstract away. We use some technical terms. We try to explain them as best possible, and we try to sort of ease the user into it. But I think it's very important to like let the user have an opportunity to like learn more about the technologies that's sort of behind the scenes. Yeah, that's how we think about it, at least.
Awesome. I'd be curious to hear how the rest of the panel thinks about it as well. Kayla, you seem like you.
So I totally understand where you are and your market segment and the audience that you have, and that I think works probably well for your consumer. Kind of what Roger was saying is like the end goal for us is mass adoption. Like without mass adoption, you know, we're not all going to make it. And so part of that is making like accessibility for everybody using like the right language, you know, NFT. You know, I didn't know what fungible was, the word fungible meant until, you know, a few years ago. And really allowing everybody to get on board with that. So my co-founder, Al Morris, founded a company before this called WeTeachBlockchain.org. And so sort of splitting that like educational section, or like that educational, like let's learn about what all these things are and how to interact with it with like your product, like connecting those dots, like saying, oh, if you don't know what this is, like go learn about it. Like here's a really good way to do that, I think is really important. But also like making it easy enough that if you don't know, it doesn't matter. Like if you want to mint an NFT, like it should be as easy as uploading to Facebook or Twitter and like just letting it go and not having to know all of the technical behind the scenes.
And I agree completely with that. It doesn't, yeah. I agree completely. Like I think the key for us, at least, what we've been trying to do is like make it so that the user doesn't have to know anything. So we don't want to like make them, we don't want to cater to developers, obviously, but like we're just trying to find a good balance between like having the user like interact with it like it's a Web2 app and like letting them actually feel the technology behind it, because it is very cool, right?
Also, any other comments on this particular question? Like, what sort of information do you guys feel like users like have to have up front?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, we actually like in the one aspect that we've really focused on is gas abstraction at Biconomy. So at the moment, we work with over 80 dApps and have powered over 15 million gases transactions where developers are sponsoring the gas fees on behalf of end users. And this is like a huge layer that we could like, you know, that a lot of developers like are just so excited about abstracting away, because all the end user has to do is just click a sign button and that's it. Instead of having to do like 2 different like additional steps and even like a financial decision as well. And for us, our thesis is that if gas fees doesn't sort of come down over the long term, then we're not going to make it, to Kayla's point. So for us, like our thesis, because gas fees will come down eventually, a Web2 developer who's coming to Web3, they'll be like, why are end users paying a gas fee for every single transaction? Like, that's stupid. It's like going to a toll, it's like going to a highway and paying a toll, you know, booth like for every 10 meters you drive, right? Either, well, how we think about it is gas fees will be fully paid by the dApp, or there could be like a monthly subscription, or the end users could pay gas in a different token, right? Or, you know, there'll be like partial gas subsidies, for example. So at least for us, we're like very focused on this layer of like how we could just make it very flexible for developers, because they know their end users more than us. how they engage. Like, so for with DeFi applications, for example, they don't necessarily have to sponsor gas. They could partially gamify it or make conditional transactions. But when it comes to NFTs, when it comes to gaming, like we're now powering the Sandbox, Decentraland, and a few other sort of marketplaces because they just see the value that the end users don't need to pay gas. And so that kind of helps. And it's like understanding, you know, to your point, like who your end users are and yeah.
Yeah, and just to add just a little bit to that, I think that it's really interesting to focus on like the user persona, because as he's mentioning before, you've got different types of users. You've got the expert developer who wants to see all the knobs, all the buttons, all the detail, and then you're going to have probably another persona that's going to say, where's the easy button, right? So you can use, you know, techniques like, you know, eventually revealing the complexity, like, you know, okay, what's behind the settings button? What's behind the advanced button? Or the people that don't care about it, they just want to push the button and go, right? So, and it's really clever ways to do that. And then, like, you know, their way is even more clever, right? They've gotten rid of the gas buttons altogether and just completely removed that away. So, like, and, you know, like Kayla said, you've got to get it simpler, easier, faster, better than the existing user interfaces, or you're not going to get the mass adoption. So.
Tooltips are really good for that. Like, if you want to know, you click on the question mark, and then it's like, ooh, here's all the details. But like, if you don't want to know, you don't even see it.
Yeah. This next question is in a similar vein. And I think we've already kind of broached the subject a little bit. So when we talk about user experience in Web3, especially when it comes to mass adoption, I think we're often comparing that experience to that of Web 2, just because that's what we're used to, where a lot of that technical detail has been abstracted away almost entirely in most cases. So engaging with Web 3, at least today, requires a certain amount of technical fluency just to engage. My question for you is, what level of technical, or what demands for technical knowledge should we expect the average user to rise to, I guess. That's not a very fair way of framing it, though. But what should we reasonably expect that average users will be able to learn in order to engage with these technologies? And if that bar is relatively low, how do we mitigate for that, or account for that knowledge gap? Kayla.
I have a question, a clarification question.
Yes.
Are we saying right now? Are we saying, like, what are we trying to, like, for whom?
For whom? I guess, so, like, the members of my family who have never heard of MetaMask, and I want to start introducing them to Web3. At this point, they're going to have to learn how to use MetaMask. Is there a point in the future where something that doesn't require that kind of technical knowledge, and how far away is it, I guess? I guess the other part of the question is, as these technologies are introduced, do we expect the average user to just naturally acquire a higher level of technical understanding in order to engage with the technologies?
So I'm on like two sides, because one side tells me this really depends on the market, and the market kind of dictates what happens. So like one example here is, so again, I don't mean to shill Biconomy, but we did a drop for 100 Thieves. They're like this esports company in LA, like really huge. They partnered with us and Web3 Auth. They're sort of like this sort of easy wallet. And basically we did 700,000 NFT mints for them over 2 days. And it just required 2 buttons from end users. It was like either log in through MetaMask and sign, or put in your email address, and you essentially have a wallet created for you. And then what happens is, again, at the back end, Biconomy does a gas transaction, and the NFT is minted for this end user. Again, just 2 clicks for the end user. And what we're now sort of hearing from like other folks in Web 2, they're like, this was a great experience, we want to replicate this. Now, Web 2 is way bigger than Web 3 currently, and you know this could become a norm, right? But then the other part of me says, we have so many millennials. I actually onboarded quite a lot of friends who I never thought would get on MetaMask, who I never thought would understand and be these degens. And guess what? Like, they kind of got there, either through my help or their own research. I don't expect my parents to get it at all, but I think for the next generation, I kind of see it. But again, the market I think will ultimately dictate what will happen. But there's always going to be it's like there's a highway, right? You could either take, you know, the exit through MetaMask and doing everything yourself, or you just go straight.
So I think that we need to keep the bar low, because part of what mass adoption means to me is that like the unbanked people in underserved countries, underdeveloped countries, people who don't have access to like stable capital, like we talk about like in Venezuela, where like, you know, the inflation is out of control. I mean, we could talk about inflation generally, like whatever. But like where you don't know if your government issued currency is going to like be able to feed your family tomorrow. So we need to be able to keep the bar for technical understanding like at the floor for some of that like really important stuff, some of the reasons that DeFi exists. But that said, like there are ways to make wallets a lot easier. Like Biconomy clearly has something going there with the like use your email address. Like at Koi, we launched a wallet. We just actually launched the second version of the wallet, but we're working on a mobile wallet to go along with it so that we can start like, how do we remove the seed phrase stuff? Like we're working on multi-device authentication. I am like thinking a lot about biometric identification, and like there's a lot of really cool technology there that you won't need to like keep a seed phrase locked in a safe or a security deposit box, or you know, the idea that my mom would know never to type her seed phrase into like, you know, on the internet or like into a password manager, like that's just unreasonable to expect of her. I use my mom as an example a lot because she's like, you know, tech savvy enough, but I'm sure you all can relate. But that, like, there are so many ways to do that, and I think we're actually not that far off from getting rid of things that are so complex for, you know, traditional Web2 users.
I think one more thing that's important to keep in mind is that I don't think we did a great job in Web 2 either very often. Like very often, like especially maybe if like you're a web developer, you can very often see like, okay, this web shop was clearly built around like the idea of like HTML forms or like PHP session cookies or things like that. And I think like, for example, seed phrases are the same thing in Web 3. It's like very bare bones. It's like okay, if you're a developer, that's like, seems like the obvious choice. Okay, let's just let them keep their seed phrase safe. Like that's the way to go. But it doesn't work like that for the users. Like if we're talking about mass adoption, like our parents, that's not going to work. Like credit cards as well. Like not the best UX in the world.
Yeah, I think all of those are great points, and I think that you almost kind of stole my point about Web 2. Like we're marching towards Web 2 as the standard for mass adoption, but yeah, I mean Web 2 really isn't that great either, to be honest. I mean, and we've gotten way better than the HTML form days and like tables inside of tables and tables. Date myself there, but anyway. So yeah, the next one is really interesting. Like using new technologies, you know, biometrics, encryption for the seed phrases, using those types of things that continue to abstract that stuff away, but in a safe and secure way. Those are going to be important for mass adoption. So I think that you know there's a tipping point to march towards right now to gain this, but you can't stop. I think in this industry, especially, innovation is key. If you pause or you stop, your lunch is going to get eaten tomorrow by the next one who innovates on top of it. I mean, it's just moves so fast. I think that the bar is never going to be stopped as far as like raising the bar. Right? It's going to continue.
I'm going to run the risk of asking a stupid question here, but it's one that I think a lot of average users will have when they go to engage with some of these things for the first time. In order to engage with Web3, we currently have to engage with cryptocurrency. Is crypto an absolutely necessary component of the Web3 we envision of the future? Meaning, if we're going to onboard people onto Web3, do we have to get them into crypto first? And is that always going? I mean, because currently that's the way it is. And do you see any other ways around that, or are we just true believers? Crypto is going to take over the world, and it's not going to matter.
I think that's kind of an interesting question, because if the fundamentals of what we're calling Web3 is really blockchain, and most of that economic incentive is driven by different various forms of cryptocurrency, including game theory and some other interesting things, That is a really good question, right? Because I think that, I mean, obviously, decentralized finance is taking the world by storm. This is like taking all the news. We got collectibles and NFTs and all these interesting things. But I think the real killer app behind all this blockchain is smart contracts, right? And there's other industries, there's other applications, insurance, supply chain, logistics, IoT. There's lots of other things, carbon credit markets that could benefit from the blockchain technology and smart contracts. The narrative of, truth is greater than just trust me, right? Because it's programmatically secured, it's cryptographically secured, and it's programmed on a blockchain, right? So there's no question what's going to happen, or someone can't argue and say, oh, no, I'm not going to pay out that insurance claim. Show me the damage again. Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, maybe you weren't up to date on your premiums here. Oh, you missed that, payment. I mean, none of that stuff is going to be able to be done. So I think that there's more promise beyond that, but is it a necessary component? I don't know, maybe time will tell.
So I think blockchain, obviously, yes. But in the same way that we can wrap tokens, I mean, we have, wrapped Bitcoin on, why can't we use wrapped dollars? Like if you're using fiat, like send a transfer from your bank and behind the scenes, we do all the conversion for you. So I don't think that fundamentally you have to understand crypto or how to trade or even know that you're using crypto to engage with a certain platform. If you can just pay in dollars or whatever, in attention rewards, which is another thing that we at Koi are doing. If you're putting content out and then you earn the tokens that way, and then you pay the tokens from the balance that you've already earned. You don't necessarily have to know tokens, what they are, that you're using them, if we just wrap, fiat.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your point there. I mean, if you just look recently, if you just look at how even big institutions, from just an individual to a big institution, it's very easy for anyone to just get into this space without actually having to interact with crypto per se and an actual token. I mean, if you look at JP Morgan, they kind of got into sort of this NFT space by sort of they went to Decentraland and built a lounge, right? I don't think they could actually hold crypto on the balance sheet, right? But they're kind of evolved in the whole Web3 space right now. And again, for the individual user, there are many avenues of sort of, let's say, purchasing NFTs through just fiat and not having to sort of worry about all of this. So, but again, if I just think as Web3 expands, it might be I think it would be cool if everyone was just educated on the paradigm shift that instead of 200 countries having the ability to dictate monetary policy, you now have any engineer or economist could create a monetary policy, through a really interesting protocol, right? Or a DAO. So many of them will fail, but hey, now you have more, way more experiments, and we've seen many of them actually succeed and a lot fail. So I think that paradigm shift of anyone create a monetary policy, I just think that should be spread far wide. Yeah, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I really like this question. It's a very interesting question. Yeah, cryptocurrencies and decentralized finance by extension are definitely the most obvious use cases, I guess, of blockchain and decentralized technologies. But I think it's very important that we don't forget what the point of everything is. It's decentralization and all the possibilities and making everything trustless and removing third parties and the authoritative third parties from the systems is really the end goal. And NFTs are a good example of you don't need cryptocurrency to do NFTs, not necessarily. There are other use cases. We just probably haven't figured them all out yet, I hope. For example, I know projects are doing tracing origins of food, in supermarkets using the blockchain in a trustless manner. I'm sure there's more use cases that we can figure out as time progresses.
Right, and that was sort of the idea behind the question. I came into this space because I was told that blockchain was going to underpin everything from social media to my banking system to everything. So those are some really insightful answers. At this point, I think I'd like to open it up to the room for questions.